6 weeks after Andre Colvin took the house, the car, and custody of both children, Mary Johnson stood on a cracked sidewalk in East Atlanta with her last $300 already spent, a folding table wobbling beneath 2 steaming pots, and a cardboard sign that looked so cheap it almost embarrassed her. Almost, because embarrassment was a luxury for people who still had something left to lose. At 5 in the morning, the street was cold enough to sting her fingers through the thin plastic gloves she had bought from a discount store the night before. The oil in the pan hissed like it was angry. The rice pot breathed clouds into the dark. The smell of smoked paprika, garlic, brown butter, and slow-cooked onions drifted into the empty street before the sun even thought about rising. Mary stood behind that table with a wooden spoon in her hand and a leather recipe book open beside her. The book was old. Its brown cover had softened from years of hands touching it, carrying it, saving it. Inside were 214 pages of recipes written in blue ink by her grandmother, Opal May Johnson, a woman who had fed half of New Orleans without ever calling herself generous. Andre had left Mary with that book because he thought it had no value. He had taken the house because his name was on the deed. He had taken the car because his name was on the title. He had taken the savings because his name was on the accounts. He had taken the children because, on paper, Mary had no job, no income, no credit, no home, and no proof that 12 years of cooking, cleaning, raising babies, hosting dinners, and holding a family together counted as work. But he did not take the recipe book. He did not take the smell of Opal's kitchen. He did not take the memory of a grandmother standing over a black iron pot saying, "Do not rush the roux, baby. Let the fire do its work." And 11 months later, when Mary stood in front of a national television camera with a line wrapped around the block and her food truck's name shining in gold letters, Andre was watching from the living room of the house he had stolen from her. He was not ready for what he saw, not because she looked rich, not because she looked angry, not because she mentioned his name. She did not. That was what destroyed him. Mary Johnson did not build her revenge by screaming. She built it plate by plate, and it started in the cold, before sunrise, with her hands shaking over a pot of red beans and rice, wondering if anyone would stop long enough to taste the only thing Andre had not been smart enough to steal. Before I go deeper, if you enjoy stories where the person everyone underestimated rises quietly and makes the truth impossible to ignore, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from, your city or your country. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Mary grew up on Delary Street in the lower 9th Ward of New Orleans, in a narrow house with a leaning porch, green shutters, and a kitchen that seemed to breathe even when nobody was cooking. That kitchen belonged to her grandmother, Opal May Johnson. Opal was born in 1941 and lived in that same house for 52 years. She had hands that looked older than her face, hands that could season a pot without measuring and tell by the sound of bubbling gravy whether the heat was too high. She cooked every single day, not because anyone paid her, not because anyone asked politely. She cooked because hunger offended her. If a neighbor knocked on the screen door looking tired, Opal made a plate. If a child came home from school and said there was nothing in the refrigerator, Opal sent him back with 2 containers. If a widow sat in the church pew too quiet on Sunday, Opal brought her gumbo before sunset. On Sundays, Opal cooked enough for 30 people and set the food out on the porch table. Red beans, fried catfish, smothered chicken, cornbread, peach cobbler if the peaches were right. People came and went until the pots were empty. Some left money folded under a napkin. Some left nothing but a thank you. Opal treated both exactly the same. You feed people and you look them in the eye, Opal would say. That is how you tell someone they matter. Mary heard that sentence before she understood it. She heard it at 5 years old, standing on a wooden stool beside the stove, holding a spoon too heavy for her little hand. She heard it at 10 when she made gumbo from memory, and Opal only corrected her once. She heard it at 12 when Opal sat by the window and let Mary cook the Sunday porch meal by herself for the first time. And she heard it at 22, on the morning she left New Orleans for Atlanta, when Opal placed 2 things in her hands: the leather recipe book and a photograph tucked inside the front cover. In the photograph, Opal stood in front of the Delary Street kitchen in 1989, wearing a white apron, flour on her hands, smiling like she knew something nobody else knew yet. Mary carried that book through every apartment, every job, every version of her life. At first, she opened it often. Then life got busy. Then marriage swallowed her days. Then Opal got sick. Then Opal died on a Tuesday morning in March, 4 years before everything fell apart. She was 81 years old and died in the same house on Delary Street, in a bedroom 12 feet from the kitchen where she had fed people for more than 3 decades. Mary flew home for the funeral. After everyone left, she sat alone at Opal's kitchen table for 2 hours. The stove was quiet. The counters were clean. The wooden spoon still hung from the hook beside the window. Mary did not open the recipe book. She could not, because opening it felt like calling Opal's voice into a room where Opal would not answer. So Mary flew back to Atlanta, placed the recipe book on the shelf in her kitchen, and did not open it again for 4 years. Not once. Not until the night everything else was gone. Mary met Andre Colvin when she was 25. He was 28, a commercial loan officer at a bank in Buckhead. He wore expensive suits but never bragged about them. He remembered small details. If Mary mentioned she liked black coffee, he ordered it that way the next time. If she said she hated loud restaurants, he chose quiet ones. If she talked about Opal's cooking, he listened with a patient face that made Mary feel seen. That was Andre's gift. He knew how to look like he was listening. He had a plan for everything. At first, Mary loved that. After years of working long shifts in hotel kitchens, coming home smelling like grease and dish soap, the idea of being loved by a man who had plans felt safe. Andre talked about mortgages, savings, school districts, retirement accounts, family vacations, and building a future. Mary thought it meant stability. She did not understand yet that some people do not make plans with you. They make plans around you. They married when Mary was 27. It was a small wedding, 40 guests, simple flowers, a rented hall, and food Mary cooked herself because she wanted the day to feel personal. Andre smiled when people praised the food. He said, Mary insisted on doing everything herself. At the time, it sounded like pride. Years later, Mary would realize it was practice. He was already learning how to let her work become part of his image. Their son Elijah was born when Mary was 29. Naomi came 3 years later. After Elijah's birth, Andre suggested Mary leave her job at the hotel restaurant. You do not need to work, he said, kissing the baby's forehead. I have us covered. Mary agreed because it made sense. Childcare cost more than her paycheck. Andre's salary was strong. She could stay home, raise the children, manage the house, cook, save money, and keep life steady. 2 years later, Andre suggested he handle the finances. You focus on the kids, he said. I will take care of the accounts. Again, it made sense. Andre worked with money every day. Mary trusted him. Marriage, she believed, was supposed to have trust inside it. 3 years after that, he said the house needed to be refinanced. Just paperwork, he told her, sliding documents across the kitchen counter while she stirred a pot of gumbo. The bank gives better terms with one borrower. We save almost $400 a month. Mary signed where he pointed. She did not read every page. She was cooking dinner. Naomi was crying in the living room. Elijah needed help with spelling words. Andre sounded calm and confident. She believed him because he was her husband. That is what made it work. Control does not always begin with shouting. Sometimes it begins with convenience. Sometimes it sounds like, let me handle that. Sometimes it looks like help. Andre built his life on Mary's labor and then made sure her name appeared on none of it. Every dinner party he hosted for bank clients, Mary cooked. Every holiday gathering, Mary cooked. Every Sunday when Andre casually invited colleagues over, Mary spent 6 hours in the kitchen while Andre poured drinks and accepted compliments. People remembered his home as warm. They remembered his table as impressive. They remembered him as a good host. But he never said, Mary made this. He said, we put together a little spread, or the food turned out great, or we like to host. We. That little word erased her one meal at a time. Her hands built his relationships. Her food softened his clients. Her care made his house feel like success. But on paper, Mary did not exist. Not on the mortgage, not on the savings account, not on the investments, not on the car title, not on the credit cards. 12 years of marriage, 2 children, thousands of meals, and her name was missing from every document that mattered. She did not notice the ground moving beneath her. That is the cruelest part of slow control. You do not feel yourself losing balance until the floor is gone. Andre started planning the divorce 14 months before Mary knew anything was wrong. He hired Glenn Forsythe, a 53-year-old family asset attorney with an office in Sandy Springs. Forsythe was not the kind of lawyer people hired when they wanted fairness. He was the kind of lawyer people hired when they wanted structure, timing, and clean hands while someone else got buried. In March, Forsythe helped Andre refinance the house on Collier Road into Andre's name only. Andre brought the papers home on a Wednesday evening. Mary was cooking chicken and rice. He set the papers beside the salt shaker. "Better interest rate," he said. "Just sign the last 2 pages." She signed. In June, the joint savings account disappeared into an individual account at another branch. $41,000 moved in one afternoon. Statements stopped coming to the house. Mary did not notice because Andre handled the accounts. In September, the investment account was locked into a trust, naming Andre as the sole beneficiary. In November, the car title was updated. Andre's name only. In January, the credit cards in Mary's name were closed. Andre told her there had been fraud. "The bank issued new cards," he said. The new cards came. Mary never saw them. 14 months, 7 documents. Every move made while Mary cooked dinner, packed lunches, drove Naomi to dance class, helped Elijah with homework, washed uniforms, hosted guests, and trusted the man who was quietly removing her from her own life. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday afternoon in April. Mary was in the kitchen. That was where Andre placed the envelope. Not in the living room, not at a lawyer's office, not across a table like 2 adults ending something. He placed it on the kitchen counter between the salt shaker and a bowl of rice. Mary opened it with a dish towel still in her hand. She read the first page, then the second, then all 23. Andre stood in the doorway watching her. She did not sit down. She did not cry. She did not ask why. By the time she finished reading, something inside her had gone silent in a way that scared even her. She placed the papers back on the counter exactly where he had left them. Then she looked at him. He looked at her. Neither spoke. The hearing took 6 weeks. Andre's legal team moved fast because they had already been moving for 14 months. Forsythe argued that Mary had no income, no individual bank account, no employment history for 10 years, no assets in her name, no credit history, and no stable financial position. On paper, every word was true. That was the trap. Andre's salary was $147,000 a year. The house had 2 bedrooms for the children. The mortgage was in his name. The accounts were in his name. The car was in his name. Mary sat there in a courtroom and listened to a stranger describe her as unstable because the man who made her financially invisible had succeeded. The judge granted Andre temporary primary custody of Elijah and Naomi pending final divorce proceedings. Temporary. That word was supposed to soften the blow. It did not. To Mary, it sounded like a door closing between her and her children. She left the courthouse with 1 suitcase, $300 in an old checking account Andre had forgotten existed, and the recipe book she pulled from the kitchen shelf before walking out of the house. That account was from the first year of marriage. $300. The one thing Andre and Forsythe had missed. When Mary packed, she took clothes, the book, and the photograph inside it. She did not take the silverware she had chosen. She did not take the plates her children ate from. She did not take the framed family pictures Andre had already begun removing from the hallway. She walked through the kitchen one last time. The stove where she had cooked 10,000 meals. The counter where Naomi rolled dough on Saturday mornings. The table where Elijah did homework while Mary stirred sauce beside him. She placed her hand on the counter for 1 second, then she left. Denise Okafor pulled up outside at 10:15 in a blue sedan with the engine running. Denise was Mary's old friend from Atlanta, a night shift nurse at Grady Memorial, the kind of woman who did not ask dramatic questions when someone was bleeding. She just found pressure and applied it. Mary put the suitcase in the back seat. She climbed in. Denise did not say, "Are you okay?" She knew the answer. She drove. Mary held the recipe book in her lap and did not look back at the house. For the first 3 days at Denise's apartment on Glenwood Avenue, Mary slept on the sofa and barely moved. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, though one was full of storage boxes, old uniforms, and folded laundry Denise kept promising herself she would organize. Denise worked from 7 at night to 7 in the morning, 4 nights a week. She came home exhausted, made coffee, and moved quietly around Mary as if grief were a sleeping animal. Mary sat by the living room window and watched cars pass. Her phone buzzed twice. Both messages were from Elijah. The first said, "Mom, when are you coming back?" The second said, "Naomi keeps asking." Mary read them until the words blurred. She did not reply, not because she did not love him, because she could not lie to her child. She could not say, soon, when she did not know if soon existed. She could not say, I am fine, while sitting on a borrowed sofa with no home, no car, no children beside her, and $300 in an envelope inside her bag. So she turned the phone face down, and the silence became heavier than crying. On the fourth night, Mary could not sleep. Denise was at work. The apartment was dark except for the orange streetlight leaking through the blinds. Mary lay on the sofa staring at the ceiling, listening to a car pass, then another, then nothing. Finally, she sat up. She reached into her bag. Her fingers touched the leather cover. For a long moment, she just held it. The recipe book felt warm somehow, though the room was cold. Mary had not opened it in 4 years. Not since Opal's funeral. Not since that silent kitchen on Delary Street. But that night, with everything stripped away, she opened the cover. The photograph fell into her lap. Opal May Johnson, 1989. White apron, flower on her hands, that smile. Mary stared at the picture until her throat tightened. Then she turned to the first page. Red beans and rice, blue ink, Opal's careful handwriting. In the margin, written smaller than the rest, was a note. Do not rush the roux. Let the fire do its work. Mary pressed her fingers against the words. She turned another page. Fried catfish, another note, more salt at the end, always at the end. Another page. Smothered chicken. At the bottom, Opal had written, this one is for when someone needs to feel better and does not know how to ask. Mary closed the book. She held it against her chest. For the first time since leaving the house, tears came, but they did not come loud. They came quietly, like something frozen finally thawing. By morning, Mary knew what she was going to do, not because she had a business plan, not because she had confidence, not because she believed everything would be okay. She knew because cooking was the only thing her hands remembered when her mind had nothing left. At 6:40 a.m., before Denise came home from the hospital, Mary stood in the small apartment kitchen and opened the recipe book to page 14. She chopped onions, she washed rice, she heated oil, she stirred slowly. When Denise opened the front door at 7:15, she stopped in the doorway. The apartment smelled like smoked paprika, brown butter, garlic, and something sweet underneath. Denise set her bag down. Mary stood at the stove with her hair tied back, face tired, wooden spoon in hand. For a few seconds, the two women just looked at each other. Then Mary said, I need to find somewhere to sell this. Denise nodded once. I know a Saturday market. That afternoon, Mary spread her $300 on Denise's kitchen table. $85 for the food handler permit and temporary vendor license, $140 for ingredients, $40 for containers, foil trays, plastic forks, and napkins. $35 left, a buffer that could barely buffer anything. On Tuesday morning, she took the bus to the county health department, stood in line for 2 hours, filled out forms, paid the fee, and walked out with a paper permit and a number printed on it. It was the first official document in months that had her name on it. Mary Johnson, vendor. She stared at it longer than she should have. Saturday morning at 5:45, Mary carried 2 large pots and a borrowed folding table onto the bus. People stared. One man sighed loudly when the table bumped his shoe. Mary apologized. He did not answer. She rode 9 stops to the East Atlanta Village Community Market and set up at the far end between a woman selling candles and a man selling wooden cutting boards. Everyone else had banners. Everyone else had canopies. Everyone else had tablecloths, business cards, clean displays, printed menus, and small payment signs. Mary had a folding table, 2 pots, 40 foil containers, and a piece of cardboard with prices written in black marker. Chicken and rice, red beans, $5. From 6 in the morning until 9, she sold 4 containers. People walked past. Some looked, some slowed down. Most kept walking. Mary did not call out. She did not wave anyone over. She stood there with her hands folded, trying not to look desperate. At 11:40, a woman in her mid-50s stopped in front of the table. She wore a church hat with a small feather on the side and looked at the pot like it had said her name. What is that smell? The woman asked. Smothered chicken, Mary said. The woman bought 1 container. She opened it right there beside the table and ate standing up. Mary watched without breathing. The woman took 1 bite, then another. Then she looked at Mary with something strange in her eyes. This tastes like my grandmother's cooking. Mary did not know what to say. The woman bought 3 more containers. Then she asked, Will you be here next Saturday? Mary looked down at the cardboard sign. Then she looked back up. Yes, she said. By 2 in the afternoon, Mary had sold 19 containers, $95. After ingredients and supplies, $47 remained. $47 was not rent. It was not a deposit. It was not a lawyer. It was not a way to get her children back, but it was enough to buy ingredients for the next Saturday, and one woman had come back for more. That was the number Mary carried home. Not the profit, the return. Week 2, she sold 28 containers. Week 3, 35. Week 4, all 40 were gone before 1 in the afternoon. The numbers did not explode. They climbed, slowly, steadily, like something learning how to stand. Mary cooked in Denise's kitchen, packed the food, rode buses with pots and trays, and returned every night smelling like oil and smoke and hope she was afraid to trust. Then she discovered the problem. At the public library on Ponce de Leon Avenue, sitting at a computer with a scratched keyboard and a time limit blinking in the corner, Mary read the Georgia food regulations line by line. Home kitchens had limits. Certain baked goods were allowed. Certain shelf-stable foods were allowed. Prepared meals with meat, rice, and perishable ingredients sold at public markets required a licensed commercial kitchen. Mary sat back in the chair. For 4 weeks, without knowing it, she had been breaking the rules, not because she was careless, because no one teaches abandoned women how to rebuild legally from $300 and a borrowed sofa. She searched for commercial kitchen rentals. $15 to $25 an hour, 4 hours a week minimum, $60 just to cook, before ingredients, before bus fare, before containers, before anything. A food truck would solve everything. She could cook and sell from the same place. She could move to customers instead of waiting at one market. She could build something real. Then she searched used food trucks, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for one that actually ran. Mary closed the browser tab. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. She had $47 a week, so she did the only thing she could. She added more markets. Tuesday evening at Grant Park, Thursday afternoon in Kirkwood, Saturday morning in East Atlanta. 3 markets, 3 bus routes, 2 pots, a folding table, and a rolling cart she bought for $12 at a thrift store. That was not a dream yet. That was survival with wheels. While Mary pulled that cart onto buses before sunrise, Andre sat in his office in Buckhead and ate lunch at his desk, probably convinced she was finished. In his mind, the story had already ended. He had the house, he had the car, he had the children, he had the documents. Mary had nothing. A woman with $300 and an old recipe book was not a threat to a man with lawyers. That was what Andre believed, and for a while, the world seemed to agree with him. Then Pastor Yvonne Claiborne started watching Mary from the doorway of the church kitchen. Pastor Yvonne was 67 years old and had run Greater Hope Baptist Church on Jonesboro Road for 22 years. Denise introduced Mary to the church after learning they rented their certified basement kitchen to small vendors for $15 an hour. Mary booked 4 hours every Monday and Wednesday. She arrived at 4 in the morning. She cooked, she cleaned, she paid on time, she left. For 6 weeks, Pastor Yvonne said almost nothing. She would come downstairs, stand in the doorway, watch Mary wipe down counters, smell the food, and go back upstairs. Then one Thursday evening, after Mary finished cleaning, Pastor Yvonne came down and sat at the prep table. "Sit down, baby," she said. Mary sat. Pastor Yvonne folded her hands. "I have been smelling your food for 6 weeks," she said. "I have been watching you carry those pots in here before sunrise. I have been watching you clean this kitchen better than people who have rented it for years." Mary looked down at her hands. Pastor Yvonne leaned forward. "What are you doing, and who are you doing it for?" So Mary told her, not dramatically, not with tears, just the facts: the divorce, the house, the car, the children, the $300, the recipe book, the markets, the buses, the cart. Pastor Yvonne listened without interrupting. When Mary finished, the pastor sat quiet for a while. Then she said, "Come with me." She led Mary out behind the fellowship hall to a gravel lot where an old green and white food truck sat under a tarp. The paint was peeling. 2 tires were flat. Dust coated the windows. The rear bumper was dented. The serving window's metal shutter was stuck halfway open. "This belonged to my husband, Raymond," Pastor Yvonne said. "He sold barbecue from it every Sunday after church. When he died, I could not sell it, so it sat here." Mary stepped closer. The truck looked dead. But when Pastor Yvonne pulled the tarp back, Mary saw something Andre never saw when he looked at her. Possibility. Inside were 2 gas burners, a prep counter, a small refrigerator that no longer worked, and a serving window facing the world. Mary placed both hands on the counter. For the first time since leaving Collier Road, she could see the next step. Not clearly, but enough. "I am not giving it to you," Pastor Yvonne said. Mary turned. "Raymond built this. I will not give it away, but I will rent it to you for $100 a month. You fix it yourself. If it runs and your business holds for 6 months, I will sell it to you for what Raymond paid in 2008, $4,500. Mary stared at her. "I do not have money to fix it," Pastor Yvonne smiled. "You have a church full of people who know how to fix things." Terrence Gaines, a mechanic and church member, looked at the engine that Saturday. "Fuel pump is bad," he said. "Battery is dead. Alternator is corroded. Parts will be around 350. Mary's stomach dropped. Terrence wiped his hands on a rag. "I will do the labor free." Mary looked at him. "Why?" He shrugged. "Pastor asked, and because any woman pulling pots onto a bus at 5 in the morning deserves a truck that starts." The parts cost $347. Mary paid for them with 5 weeks of market earnings. Another church member, Danda Harris, worked at an auto body shop and offered to sand and repaint the truck in exchange for 2 months of free meals. Mary agreed. For 3 weeks, people came after work, on Saturdays, during lunch breaks, between church meetings, doing what they could. Terrence replaced the fuel pump. Danda sanded the panels. Someone brought tires. Someone else fixed the gas line. Pastor Yvonne found an old refrigerator unit from another vendor. Mary cooked to pay people in plates, in thank yous, in promises she intended to keep. Then, one Saturday afternoon, the engine turned over. It coughed first, then growled, then held. Mary stood in the gravel lot with both hands over her mouth. The truck was no longer green and white. It was deep brown now, with gold lettering. Mary painted herself using a cardboard stencil and $6 of paint from the hardware store. On the side, in careful letters, were 2 words: Opal's Table. Mary stood in front of that name for a long time. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out Opal's photograph, and taped it inside the truck beside the serving window. White apron, flour on her hands, smiling like she knew something nobody else knew yet. Mary touched the edge of the photograph. Then she turned on the burners. The first month on the road, Mary parked on Wells Street in the industrial corridor south of the old stadium. Lunch from 11:30 to 1:30. Warehouse workers, truck drivers, construction crews, men and women with tired hands and short breaks. She sold plates for $7, smothered chicken over rice, red beans, fried catfish on Fridays. Week 1, she sold 32 plates. After ingredients, gas, permits, and the truck rental, her profit was thin. Not rent money, not custody money, but the truck ran, the stove lit, the line grew. Week 2, 37 plates. Week 3, 41. A construction foreman named Willis came every day at 11:45 and ordered the same thing: smothered chicken, extra rice. By the end of the first month, his whole crew came with him. Then the crew from 2 blocks over came too. Mary started keeping a notebook at Denise's apartment every night. Revenue on the left, costs on the right, notes at the bottom. Catfish sells first on Fridays. Red beans slow on Wednesdays. Add corn muffins. Try peach cobbler. Do not run out of chicken. The notebook became her second recipe book. One recorded what Opal had built. The other recorded what Mary was building. Month 2, she added a dinner stop downtown near Peachtree and Andrew Young International Boulevard. 5 to 8 in the evening. Office workers, nurses coming off shift, security guards, students, people who smelled the food from half a block away and turned their heads like memory had grabbed them. The customer base doubled. By month 3, the phone started ringing. "Are you on Wells today? You coming downtown tonight? You got catfish?" Mary did not have a website. She did not have a logo made by some marketing company. She had a phone number painted on the side of the truck and food people remembered after one bite. Denise made a Facebook page one Sunday afternoon. Opal's Table. One photo of the truck, the daily menu, the location, posted every morning at 5. 2 weeks later, the page had 400 followers. 4 weeks later, 1,200. People posted pictures of their plates and wrote things like, "Best soul food in Atlanta," and "This reminds me of home." Mary read those comments late at night on the floor of her studio apartment on Memorial Drive. Yes, studio apartment, because by then she had one. Small, bare. $850 a month. 1 mattress, 1 kitchen table, a stove that leaned slightly to the left. But the lease had her name on it. Mary Johnson, tenant. Another document Andre did not control. She called Elijah and Naomi every evening at 7:30. The custody arrangement allowed 2 afternoon visits per week and every other weekend. Mary brought food to every visit. She packed it carefully and carried it to the Collier Road house, the house where she had once lived, cooked, cleaned, decorated, raised children, and folded laundry at midnight. Now she was not allowed inside. She sat on the porch steps with Elijah and Naomi while they ate from foil containers. Naomi always said the same thing. "This is the best food in the world, Mom." Mary smiled every time. One evening, Elijah looked down at his plate and said quietly, "Dad asked why you sell food on the street." Mary kept her face still. "What did you tell him?" Elijah shrugged. "I told him it was good." Mary looked toward the closed front door. Andre knew. He was asking questions. Where did she park? How many customers came? Was anyone helping her? Did she make real money? The questions probably sounded casual when he asked the children. They were not casual. Andre was keeping track. Mary did not know how closely, not yet. 4 months after the divorce, Mary filed a motion for joint custody. Her lawyer, Simone Chabi, was 31, sharp-eyed, overworked, and not easily intimidated. She worked with Atlanta Legal Aid and had seen too many women walk into courtrooms punished for financial dependence that marriage had created. Simone prepared every document carefully: income records, lease agreement, vendor permits, kitchen rental receipts, truck rental agreement, tax filings, customer letters, Pastor Yvonne's statement. Everything Mary had built, Simone put on paper, because Andre understood paper. So now Mary would speak his language. Andre's attorney, Glenn Forsythe, responded within 9 days, 41 pages. He called Mary's business unstable. He called the truck an informal street operation. He highlighted that she had slept on a friend's sofa after the divorce. He questioned her income. He questioned her schedule. He questioned whether selling food from a truck was a suitable foundation for raising children. He did not mention the permits. He did not mention the certified kitchen. He did not mention the tax filings showing upward revenue. He did not mention the lease in Mary's name, because mentioning those things would make Mary look like what she was becoming, a business owner. The custody review hearing was held at Fulton County Superior Court on a Tuesday morning in August. Judge Eleanor Maynard presided. Mary sat on one side. Andre sat on the other. He wore a navy suit and the same calm face he had worn through every betrayal. He did not look worried. That bothered Mary more than if he had smiled. Forsythe went first. He spoke smoothly. He presented screenshots of the Facebook page, photos of the truck, Mary's income records framed as inconsistent, her first 60 days without housing framed as instability, her business framed as risk. "This is not a stable environment for children," he said. Mary felt those words in her chest. Then Simone stood. She did not have Forsythe's expensive suit. She did not have his courtroom reputation, but she had the folder. 3 months of tax filings, a signed lease, food handler permit, commercial kitchen agreement, truck rental contract, 14 handwritten letters from customers, one from Pastor Yvonne stating Mary had rented the kitchen for 4 months without missing payment, had cleaned it perfectly, had shown character, discipline, and responsibility. Judge Maynard read everything. She looked at Mary. She looked at Andre. She did not rule. Instead, she continued the case for 60 days. "I want to see sustained income and confirmed housing stability before making a custody determination," she said. 60 days. Mary walked out of the courtroom with Simone beside her and stood in the parking lot under the hot Atlanta sun. She checked her phone. One message from Naomi. "Are you coming to get us, Mom?" Mary closed her eyes. 60 days. That was what stood between her and her children. 60 days of no missed rent, no missed tax filings, no business gaps, no mistakes Andre could turn into weapons. That night, Mary opened Opal's recipe book on the counter of her studio apartment. She turned to the page for peach cobbler. At the bottom, Opal had written, "This one is for when the house feels too quiet." Mary read the note 3 times. Then she tied her apron. For the next 20 days, Mary worked from before sunrise until after dark. She cooked in the church kitchen at 4 in the morning. She parked on Wells Street for lunch. She drove downtown for dinner. She added fried okra. She added peach cobbler. Both sold out on the first day. Revenue climbed. $220, $240, some days more. Every night, she wrote the numbers in her notebook. Every receipt saved. Every dollar tracked. Every payment made. Day 25, she renewed her studio lease through the end of the year and mailed Simone a copy. Day 30, she filed another month of self-employment taxes. Revenue was up 11%. Day 38, a woman with short hair and a press badge walked up to the serving window at 6:15 p.m. She ordered smothered chicken. She ate standing on the sidewalk 10 feet from the truck. Then she came back. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked. Mary wiped her hands on a towel. "A few months." The woman studied her. "My name is Keisha Dawson. I work with a local news station. I am producing a series on small business owners in black communities across Atlanta." Mary did not move. Keisha looked at the line, the truck, the photograph taped beside the window, and the recipe book on the counter. "I would like to feature you." Mary's first instinct was fear. Attention was dangerous. Andre turned everything into evidence. So Mary said, "I need to think about it." Keisha nodded. "Take your time." That night, Mary called Denise from the studio apartment. She sat on the floor beside the mattress, phone on speaker, recipe book open across the room. "A reporter wants to do a story on me," Mary said. Denise was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "What would Opal say?" Mary looked at the photograph on the wall. Opal's smile looked almost knowing. The next morning, Mary called Keisha. "Yes," she said, but she did not know that someone else would hear about the reporter before the cameras ever arrived. Someone she trusted, someone who had been standing beside her with one hand on her shoulder and the other hand sending every detail straight to Andre. And when Andre found out Mary was about to be on television, he made the one mistake that would turn her little food truck story into something the entire city could not stop watching. So stay close, because what he did next was supposed to silence Mary. Instead, it exposed him. And before we continue, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because stories like this prove that the person left with nothing is not always the one who loses. Also, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, your city or country. I want to know how far Opal's table has reached. Charlene Colvin had been calling Mary every week since the second month after the divorce. At first, Mary almost did not answer. Charlene was Andre's younger sister, and anything connected to Andre felt like a wire with current running through it. But Charlene's voice had been soft the first time she called. Not pitying, not fake, just careful. "Mary," she had said, "I know I am probably the last person you want to hear from, but I want you to know I do not agree with what he did." Mary had stood inside the food truck after the lunch rush, towel in one hand, phone pressed to her ear, not knowing what to say. Charlene continued, "Family is still family, even when legal papers try to make it look different. If you need anything, I want to help." Those words had landed in a place Mary was trying to protect. Because after betrayal, kindness feels suspicious, but loneliness makes suspicion tired. So Mary let Charlene come by the truck. Charlene brought napkins from the wholesale club because she had a membership. She brought bottled water when the August heat turned the inside of the truck into a metal box full of fire. She helped wipe counters after the lunch rush. She asked about Elijah and Naomi. She asked how business was going. She asked whether Mary had found a lawyer yet. Mary answered honestly, not because she was foolish, because Charlene had shown up. And when someone shows up while you are struggling, you want to believe they came for the right reason. What Mary did not know was that Charlene usually called Andre within 15 minutes of leaving the truck, sometimes sooner. The week Keisha Dawson came to the serving window, Charlene called Mary on a Wednesday evening. Mary was sitting on the floor of the studio apartment, folding towels, with the recipe book open on the kitchen counter and the smell of peach cobbler still hanging in the room. "How are you holding up?" Charlene asked. "Tired," Mary said, "but still standing." "That is good." Charlene paused. "Business still doing well, better than I expected. I saw the page, more followers every day." Mary smiled faintly. "Denise keeps telling me I need to post more. I barely know what I am doing." Charlene laughed. For a moment it felt normal. Then Charlene asked, "Someone told me a reporter came by the truck. What is that about?" Mary looked toward the kitchen. The recipe book was open to smothered chicken. "It is just a local story," Mary said. "Small business owners, food truck, nothing personal. Are they filming you?" "I think so." Keisha said they would film the kitchen, the truck, maybe some customers. "Is she asking about Andre?" "No," Mary said quickly. "And I am not talking about him. I told her that. This is about the food, about Opal." Charlene was quiet for half a second. Then she said, "That sounds beautiful. I am proud of you, Mary. Really." Mary closed her eyes. "Thank you." 14 minutes after the call ended, Charlene sat in her car outside a grocery store in Smyrna and typed a message to Andre. "Reporter came to truck. Name is Keisha Dawson. Local news station on 14th Street. Segment about black small business owners. Filming soon. Mary says she will not mention you or divorce. She stared at the message before sending it. Her thumb hovered over the screen. For 1 second, there was still time not to do it. Then she sent it. Charlene was not a villain in the way people like stories to have villains. She did not wake up excited to betray Mary. She did not laugh when Mary cried. She did not enjoy feeding information to Andre. That almost made it worse, because harm does not need joy to be real. Charlene was afraid. 6 months before the divorce, Andre had called her about the townhouse in Smyrna. He was the co-signer on her mortgage. Without his name, her credit score would not carry the loan. She knew that. He knew she knew it. The phone call lasted less than 4 minutes. Andre did not shout. He did not threaten in the way that would sound dramatic if repeated in court. He simply said, "I need to know what Mary is doing. If I am going to keep helping you, you need to help me." Charlene had understood. If she refused, Andre would remove himself from the mortgage. If he removed himself, the bank would review the loan. If the bank reviewed the loan, she would lose the townhouse. So Charlene did the math. Her house against Mary's privacy, her security against Mary's trust. She chose the house. At first, she told herself she was only passing along harmless things. Mary started selling at the market. Mary found a church kitchen. Mary got a truck. Mary filed for custody. Mary had a reporter interested. Each message felt small when she sent it, but small betrayals, repeated long enough, become a system, and Andre loved systems. When Andre received Charlene's message about the reporter, he was sitting at the kitchen table on Collier Road, the same table where Elijah used to do homework while Mary cooked beside him. The children were upstairs. The house was quiet. Andre read the message twice. Then he stood and walked to the living room window. A television segment. Mary on camera. Mary with customers. Mary with that truck. He had expected her to struggle quietly. He had expected her to remain small, desperate, grateful for scraps of visitation, too tired to fight him properly. But visibility changed things. People believed what they could see, and if the city saw Mary working, feeding people, standing on her own, then the courtroom might see it too. Andre called Mary the next evening. She was in the truck on Peachtree Street. The dinner rush had ended, and she had just turned off one burner. Outside, downtown lights reflected on the serving window. Inside, the air was thick with heat, oil, and exhaustion. Her phone rang. Andre Colvin. Mary stared at the screen. For a moment, her body remembered being his wife. The old reflex almost answered softly. Then she picked up and said nothing. Andre spoke first. "Mary." His voice was gentle. That was how she knew he wanted control. "I heard you were speaking to a reporter." Mary looked at the photograph of Opal taped beside the window. "I am doing a small business story. The divorce is a private matter. I am not discussing the divorce. You do not know how these people edit things." Mary said nothing. "Elijah is already asking questions at school," Andre continued. "Naomi has been quiet lately. You need to think about what is best for them." There it was. The children. He always reached for the place that hurt most. Mary gripped the edge of the counter. For 12 years, she had let Andre's calm voice turn her instincts against her. If she wanted something, he made it sound selfish. If she questioned him, he made it sound emotional. If she defended herself, he made it sound harmful to the children. Not this time. "I am not telling our story, Andre," she said. "I am building mine." Then she hung up. She placed the phone on the counter beside the stove. Her hand shook once. Only once. Then she cleaned the truck for the night. Andre called Glenn Forsythe within the hour. By the next afternoon, Forsythe had drafted a cease and desist letter addressed to Keisha Dawson at the news station. The letter warned that any broadcast segment referencing Andre Colvin, his children, his assets, or the details of his divorce proceedings would be considered defamatory and could result in legal action. Forsythe sent it by email and certified mail. Andre thought that was smart. It was not. It was the mistake that changed everything. Before the letter, Keisha's segment was supposed to be 2 minutes, a warm local piece near the end of the evening broadcast. A woman, a food truck, a grandmother's recipe book, a little struggle, a little triumph, the kind of story viewers enjoy, share once, and forget by bedtime. But when Kesha received the cease and desist, she took it straight to her executive producer. He read the letter in silence. Then he leaned back in his chair. "A man sent a lawyer after a food truck story?" he asked. Kesha nodded. "Her ex-husband." The producer tapped the letter against the desk. "And she was not planning to mention him?" No. He looked at her. Then now we have a bigger story. That was how Andre turned a 2-minute food segment into an 8-minute prime-time feature about power, control, and a woman rebuilding in public after someone tried to make her disappear. The exact thing he did not want anyone to see became the center of the story, and he had handed it to them on legal letterhead. At the same time, Forsyth filed a supplemental brief with Judge Maynard's court. He argued that Mary was seeking media attention instead of focusing on stability for the children. He attached screenshots of Opal's Table's Facebook page, Kesha's message to Mary, and mentions of the upcoming feature. He framed attention as irresponsibility. He framed community support as distraction. He framed Mary's rising business as a threat to her children rather than proof that she could provide for them. The brief landed on the judge's desk 11 days before the next custody hearing. Mary did not see it right away. Simone did. She called Mary that evening. "Do not panic," Simone said. Mary sat on the edge of the mattress. "I hate when people start with that. I know, but listen to me. They are trying to make the television piece look like you are chasing fame. I did not chase it. I know. I did not even want to do it at first. I know." Mary pressed her fingers against her forehead. "What do? We tell the truth," Simone said. "And Mary?" "Yes. Do not let Andre scare you into becoming invisible again. That is what he wants." Mary looked across the room at Opal's recipe book. Its cover was worn. Its pages had survived grease stains, watermarks, time, death, and neglect. Still there, still useful, still speaking. The cameras arrived at Greater Hope Baptist Church at 4:15 on a Monday morning. Mary was already inside the basement kitchen. The stove was on, steam lifted from a pot. The recipe book was open to page 47, Opal's smothered chicken. The air smelled like onions, paprika, butter, garlic, and heat. Kesha came in quietly with a cameraman and sound technician. "We will stay out of your way," she said. Mary nodded. Then she cooked. She did not perform. She did not look into the camera and pretend to be stronger than she felt. She measured, stirred, tasted, adjusted. She wiped spills immediately. She checked rice with 2 fingers. She let the gravy thicken slowly. The cameraman captured her hands more than her face at first. Hands chopping celery, hands lifting a heavy pot, hands turning pages in the recipe book, hands touching the photograph before leaving the kitchen. Kesha noticed that. "Who is she?" Kesha asked, pointing gently to the photo. Mary looked at Opal. "My grandmother. What was her name?" "Opal May Johnson." Kesha waited. Mary continued. "She taught me to cook. But not just cook. She taught me that feeding people is a way of telling them they matter." Kesha did not speak for a moment. Then she said, "That is the story." They followed Mary to the truck. They filmed her unlocking the serving window while the morning sky turned pale. They filmed the gold letters on the side, Opal's Table. They filmed the first customer arriving before the truck was even fully open. By noon, the line stretched past the corner. Warehouse workers, nurses, office employees, construction crews, people who had found the truck through Facebook, people who had been told by friends, people who just followed the smell. Mary served plate after plate. Smothered chicken, extra rice, catfish, no hot sauce, 2 cobblers, red beans please. She looked every person in the eye, just like Opal taught her. Kesha interviewed customers. One of them was the woman from that first Saturday market, the woman with the church hat who had bought 1 container, then 3 more. She stood in front of the camera with her hands folded around a plate. "This food reminds me of home," she said. "Not restaurant home, real home, like somebody cooked because they cared whether you made it through the day." Mary heard that from inside the truck. She turned away quickly before the camera could catch her face. Later, between lunch and dinner, Kesha interviewed Mary inside the truck. Mary sat on a small prep stool, hands in her lap. The recipe book rested on the counter beside her. Opal's photograph was visible behind her shoulder. Kesha asked, "How did Opal's Table begin?" Mary looked down. "With $300, she said. Kesha waited. Mary breathed in. "I had lost everything I thought I had. The house, the car, time with my children, my sense of who I was. I had this recipe book from my grandmother and $300 in an account nobody thought mattered, so I cooked." "Were you afraid?" Mary smiled a little, but it was not a happy smile. "I was terrified." "What kept you going?" Mary looked at the recipe book. "My children, and my grandmother's voice in those pages." "Is this revenge?" The question hung in the hot air. Mary did not answer immediately. Outside, someone laughed in line. A car horn sounded down the street. The truck's refrigerator hummed. Finally, Mary said, "No. Revenge is when you are still building your life around the person who hurt you. This is not about him. This is about me not disappearing." Kesha's eyes changed when she heard that. So did the story. The segment aired on a Thursday night. Prime time. 8 minutes. The title card read, "Opal's Table, One Woman, $300 and a Recipe Book." Mary watched it from her studio apartment with Denise sitting beside her on the floor and Pastor Yvonne on speakerphone. Elijah and Naomi were not with her that night. That hurt, but Mary told herself they would see it one day. The piece began in the dark church kitchen. Mary's hands, the open recipe book, the note in the margin, "Do not rush the roux, let the fire do its work." Then the truck, the line, the customers, the woman in the church hat saying the food reminded her of home. Then Mary's voice, "I lost everything I thought I had, then I found everything I actually needed." Mary covered her mouth. Denise wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. Pastor Yvonne said through the phone, "Opal is dancing somewhere." Within 48 hours, Opal's Table's Facebook page jumped from 1,200 followers to 23,000. The clip spread across social media. People shared it with captions like, "You need to watch this. This is what rebuilding looks like. Somebody find this woman and buy every plate." By the next lunch service, the line was twice as long. By dinner, 3 local stations had requested permission to use the footage. By the end of the week, the original clip had more than 200,000 views. Mary did not know what to do with that kind of attention, so she did what she understood. She cooked more rice, she bought more chicken, she asked Terrence to check the truck twice in 1 week. She posted the location every morning at 5, and every night, no matter how tired she was, she wrote the numbers in her notebook, because attention could disappear, but records mattered. Andre watched the segment from the living room of the Collier Roadhouse. He had not planned to watch. The television was on while he scrolled through his phone, half listening, half irritated by the noise. Then he heard the name, Opal's Table. His head lifted. The screen showed the truck, deep brown paint, gold lettering. A line wrapped along the sidewalk. Then Mary appeared inside the truck. She wore an apron, not a new apron, the same kind she had worn in his kitchen for 12 years. Andre sat still. He watched her tilt her head while tasting gravy, the way she always had when checking seasoning. He watched her move around the small space with the same quiet focus she once brought to his dinner parties. He watched strangers line up for food he had eaten for years without ever really tasting. Then the camera showed the recipe book, brown leather cover, blue ink. Andre recognized it. It had sat on the shelf above the microwave for their entire marriage. 12 years. He had never opened it. Not once. The camera moved to the photograph taped beside the window. Opal May Johnson, white apron, flour on her hands. Andre did not recognize her. He had lived in the same house as that photograph for more than a decade and had never asked who she was. Then he heard Mary's voice. "I lost everything I thought I had. Then I found everything I actually needed." Andre reached for the remote and turned the television off. The screen went black, but that did not help, because what he had seen was already inside the room. The house felt different after that. For the first time, Andre looked around and saw what Mary had put into it. Not furniture, not decoration, presence. The smell that had made guests relax, the food that had made clients linger, the warmth that had made people call his house beautiful. He had taken the house, but the thing that made it feel like home was now on television, parked on a street corner, feeding strangers who knew its value better than he ever had. Andre called Forsyte. "Can we use this against her in court?" he asked. Forsyte said yes. Of course he said yes. Men like Forsyte believed almost anything could become a weapon if filed correctly. The 60-day hearing took place on a Wednesday morning in October. Same courthouse, same judge, same tables, but Mary was not the same woman who had sat there in August. She still felt fear. She still missed her children with a pain that made breathing difficult some mornings, but she had records now. Receipts, tax filings, lease renewals, business growth, community letters, a television segment that showed not chaos but discipline. Mary wore a simple navy dress Denise had helped her choose from a thrift shop. She tied her hair back. She carried a folder. Simone walked beside her. Andre arrived with foresight. His suit was perfect. His face was controlled. But when Mary looked at him this time, she saw something she had missed before. Andre was calm only when he believed the room belonged to him. Today, he was not sure. Foresight went first. He presented the television segment as Exhibit A. He presented screenshots showing 23,000 followers. He presented comments from strangers praising Mary's food. He presented the cease and desist letter his own office had sent, but carefully, as if it proved Andre had been protecting his privacy rather than interfering with Mary's work. The respondent has prioritized media exposure and social media growth over demonstrating the stable private environment this court requested, Foresight said. Mary stared at the table. Stable private environment. That phrase almost made her laugh. When she was invisible in Andre's house, cooking his meals, raising his children, and signing papers she did not understand, they called her dependent. Now that people could see her working, they called her attention-seeking. There was always a new word for a woman who refused to stay where she was placed. Then Simone stood. She did not rush. She laid out 5 months of self-employment tax records showing revenue increasing every month. She submitted the lease renewal for the Memorial Drive apartment. She submitted a report from the court-appointed social worker who had visited Mary's home twice and found it clean, suitable, and stable. She submitted 23 letters from community members, Pastor Yvonne, Denise, Terrence, Donda, customers, people who had watched Mary show up before sunrise, cook legally, pay rent, track income, serve food, and keep going. Then Simone addressed the television segment. Your Honor, Ms. Johnson did not contact the station. A reporter approached her as a customer. Ms. Johnson did not mention Mr. Colvin by name. She did not discuss the divorce. She did not accuse him publicly. In fact, the only party who introduced legal conflict into this media coverage was Mr. Colvin through a cease and desist letter sent before any defamatory statement existed. Judge Maynard looked at Foresight. Foresight's jaw tightened. Simone continued, My client sold plates of food. Attention found her. That is not instability. That is community recognition. Mary felt something shift in the room. Not victory. Not yet. But the air changed. Judge Maynard reviewed the filings. Then she looked up. Any additional witnesses? Foresight said, No, Your Honor. Simone said, Yes, Your Honor. Mary turned toward her. Simone had not told her this part. The courtroom door opened. Charlene Colvin walked in. Andre turned so sharply his chair made a sound against the floor. Charlene did not look at him. She walked to the front of the courtroom and took the witness stand. Mary's stomach went cold. Charlene looked smaller than usual. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was pale. She clasped her hands so tightly her knuckles looked white. Simone approached. Please state your name. Charlene Colvin. And your relationship to the parties. I am Andre's sister. Mary is my former sister-in-law. Simone nodded. Have you been in contact with Mary Johnson since the divorce? Yes. Why? Charlene swallowed. I told her I wanted to help. Did you help her? Sometimes. I brought supplies. I visited the truck. Did you also communicate information about Mary to Andre Colvin? The courtroom went still. Andre leaned toward Foresight. Foresight whispered something, but his face had changed. Charlene looked down. Yes. Mary stopped breathing. Simone's voice remained steady. For how long? About 5 months. What kind of information did you provide? Charlene's voice shook. Where she was selling, how much business she was getting, when she got the truck, when she filed for custody, when the reporter came, when the filming might happen. Mary stared at her. Every conversation, every soft question, every, I am proud of you, every bottle of water, every napkin, every visit. Andre had been standing behind all of it. Simone asked, why did you provide this information? Charlene's eyes filled with tears. Andre was the co-signer on my mortgage. He told me if I did not keep him informed, he would remove himself from the loan. I could not afford the townhouse without him. Judge Maynard's expression hardened. Simone asked, what changed? Charlene wiped her cheek. He removed himself anyway. Andre looked down. When? 6 weeks ago. What happened after that? The bank started foreclosure proceedings. I lost the townhouse. The room was silent except for someone shifting in the back row. Simone submitted printed text messages between Charlene and Andre. 47 messages over 5 months. Dates, times, details, each one sent shortly after Charlene spoke with Mary. Judge Maynard read them slowly. Mary sat frozen. Her hurt was so deep it had no sound, not just because Charlene betrayed her, because Andre had once again turned need into a leash, only this time the leash was around his own sister's throat. Judge Maynard closed the folder. She looked at Andre, then at Forsyth, then at Mary. The court finds that the father engaged in a pattern of surveillance and interference through a third party during an active custody proceeding. This behavior is inconsistent with the best interests of the children. Mary's hands went numb. Judge Maynard continued. Primary custody is hereby transferred to the mother, effective immediately. The father will retain visitation rights on a schedule to be determined by this court within 14 days. Mary heard Simone exhale beside her. She heard Charlene crying quietly on the witness stand. She heard Andre say something under his breath, but all of it sounded far away. Only one sentence stayed clear. Primary custody is hereby transferred to the mother. Mary walked out of the courthouse on legs that did not feel like hers. The October air hit her face. Simone touched her shoulder. "You did it." Mary shook her head. "No," she whispered. "We are going home." Then she took out her phone and called Elijah. He answered on the second ring. "Mom?" Mary closed her eyes. "You and Naomi are coming home." For a few seconds there was no sound. Then Elijah said, very quietly, "For real. For real." Mary heard him cover the phone. She heard muffled shouting, then Naomi's voice in the background. "Are we coming now?" Mary laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes," she said, "now." But Andre was not finished losing. He just did not know it yet, because the court filing became public record the following week, and once people saw what he had done, the life he built on control began cracking in places no lawyer could repair. The court filing became public record the following week. At first, nobody outside the courthouse noticed. Legal records are not loud. They do not knock on doors or announce themselves over dinner. They sit inside systems, filed under names and dates, waiting for someone with a reason to look. But Andre Colvin worked in commercial banking. And in banking, reputation is not decoration. It is the product. People trusted Andre with numbers, private records, loan structures, business accounts, debt schedules, and financial decisions that could keep a company alive or pull it underwater. His clients did not only need him to understand money, they needed him to be trustworthy with leverage. The custody filing described a man who had used financial leverage over his own sister to extract private information about his ex-wife during an active custody case. That was not a small detail. That was a warning label. 2 partners at Andre's bank read the filing within days. One saw it because a client sent it with a short message. "Is this the same Andre Colvin handling our account?" The partner did not answer right away. He read the filing twice, then he forwarded it internally. By the end of the week, Andre's largest commercial accounts were under review. Nobody called it punishment. People like Andre rarely get punished directly at first. The world is smoother than that. It uses words like reassignment, restructuring, review, risk management, and client comfort, but the result was the same. His accounts began moving away from him. One client asked for a different loan officer, then another. Then a real estate development group delayed a meeting and never rescheduled. Within a month, Andre lost 2 commercial contracts worth a combined $370,000 in fees to the bank. The loss did not come because Mary said his name on television. She never did. It came because the public record said enough. Andre had spent months trying to make Mary look unstable. Instead, the court record made him look dangerous, and dangerous was bad for business. At home, the Collier Roadhouse felt colder by the day. Not physically. The heat worked. The lights came on. The furniture remained expensive and arranged exactly as before. But the house had lost its center. Elijah's sneakers were gone from the hallway. Naomi's hair ribbons no longer appeared on bathroom counters. There were no lunch containers drying beside the sink, no small arguments over homework, no smell of onions softening in butter at 5 in the evening, no Mary moving from stove to table to sink, making a home function while Andre convinced himself he was the one holding it together. The silence was not peaceful. It was evidence. Andre started staying later at work, even after his accounts were reduced. Then, when work no longer welcomed him the same way, he stayed in the car outside the house. house before going in. Some nights he sat in the driveway with the engine off and the phone in his hand, scrolling through Opal's Tables page. He told himself it was strategy. It was not. It was obsession. Every morning at 5, Mary posted the day's location and menu. Monday, Wells Street lunch, Peachtree dinner, smothered chicken, red beans, fried okra, peach cobbler. Tuesday, Grant Park evening, catfish plates until sold out. Friday, catfish day. Come early. Under every post, people commented, "I am bringing my mother today. Save me 2 cobblers. Best plate in Atlanta. That gravy changed my life." Andre read them all. He read strangers praising the food he had eaten for years without ever thanking the woman who made it. He read comments calling Mary strong, humble, gifted, inspiring. He hated that word most, inspiring. It made his betrayal sound like the beginning of her story instead of the end. The woman Andre had been seeing left him in November. Her name was Tanya. She was 29, worked in marketing downtown, and had entered Andre's life during the last months of his marriage, when he was already planning the divorce but still coming home to Mary's meals. Tanya had never known the real House. She knew the version Andre presented: the polished man, the stable father, the successful banker, the homeowner. The man who said his marriage had been over emotionally for years, as if that sentence could clean the dirt from what he was doing. When the custody filing became public and whispers reached her office, Tanya searched his name. Then she read. The next day, she did not answer his call. The day after that, she blocked him. Andre drove to her apartment building once and waited across the street for 40 minutes before realizing how pathetic it looked. He left before she came out. She did not owe him an explanation. Andre had taught everyone around him to value appearances. Now his appearance had changed, so people changed with it. Foresight's final invoice arrived in early December. $47,000. Legal strategy, filing fees, custody motions, asset restructuring, cease and desist correspondence, supplemental briefs, court appearances, consultations billed at $425 an hour. Andre stared at the invoice at the kitchen table, the same table where Mary had once helped Elijah with spelling words. $47,000 to take everything from a woman who had 300. $47,000 to end up with less than he started, because Mary had her children back. Mary had Opal's Table. Mary had a lease in her name, tax filings in her name, customers who knew her name, and a court order that said the children belonged primarily with her. Andre had a legal bill, shrinking accounts, a damaged reputation, an empty house, and visitation days written by a judge. By the second week of December, he could no longer keep up with the house payments. That was the part nobody sees in revenge stories, unless they have lived around money. People think a man like Andre owns everything he stands in front of. He did not. He owed on the house, he owed on the car, he owed on credit cards, he owed foresight, he owed the image he had built, and that image charged interest. The Collier Road house had been manageable when his income was untouched and his reputation made clients comfortable. Once the accounts moved and his bonuses shrank, the house became what it had always been: debt with walls. Andre put it on the market quietly. He told people he was downsizing. Nobody believed him. By January, he moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Kennesaw. The kitchen was small and clean because he barely used it. The refrigerator held bottled water, takeout boxes, and a jar of mustard he did not remember buying. He had spent 12 years walking through kitchens Mary filled with life. Now he had a kitchen that proved he had never learned how to feed himself. One Sunday evening, Andre called Mary. She was in the studio apartment on Memorial Drive, standing at the stove while Elijah sat at the small table working on math homework and Naomi colored beside him. The phone buzzed on the counter. Andre Colvin. Mary looked at the screen. For a moment, the old fear rose, not as strong as before, but familiar enough to recognize. Then she placed the phone face down and let it ring. It stopped. Naomi looked up. Who was it? Mary stirred the pot. Nobody we need right now. She did not say it with bitterness. That surprised her. There had been a time when not answering Andre would have felt like rebellion. Now it felt like peace. The next day, Andre called Elijah. Elijah answered because he was 13 and still trying to understand how love and disappointment could sit inside the same name. "I miss you, son," Andre said. Elijah was quiet. Mary stood across the room, pretending not to listen, folding dish towels that were already folded. Finally, Elijah said, "Mom is cooking tonight. I have to go." Then he hung up. Not angry, not cruel, just elsewhere. That broke Andre more than shouting would have. Anger keeps a person connected. Indifference closes the door. The first night Elijah and Naomi stayed with Mary after the custody transfer had been in late October, but it lived in Mary's memory like a holiday. She had moved a second mattress into the bedroom that morning. She put fresh sheets on it, blue for Elijah, yellow for Naomi. She bought 2 cheap pillows from a discount store and stood in the aisle for 10 minutes trying to choose the softest ones. She set the small table by the kitchen window with 3 plates. 3 glasses, 3 forks, not paper, real plates, real glasses, real forks, because they were home. Mary opened Opal's recipe book to page 1, red beans and rice, the first recipe Opal had ever written down. In the margin, Opal had left a note. This one is for when someone comes home. Mary touched those words with the tip of her finger. Then she started cooking, slowly, no rushing, letting the fire do its work. By the time Elijah and Naomi arrived, the apartment smelled like Delary Street, like childhood, like Sunday porch tables, like something lost finding its way back through the door. Naomi came in first, carrying a backpack too heavy for her shoulders. She looked around the studio apartment. It was small, smaller than the Collier Roadhouse by a lot. There was no yard, no second bathroom, no big staircase, no dining room, no guest bedroom, no polished hallway. Mary watched her daughter's face carefully. Then Naomi saw the photograph above the stove. Opal May Johnson, framed now in plain wood behind clean glass, white apron, flour on her hands, smiling like she knew something nobody else knew yet. "Who is that?" Naomi asked. Mary stood beside her. "That is the woman who taught me everything I know." Elijah came in behind them and looked at the picture too. "She is our family?" he asked. Mary nodded. "Very much." They sat at the table. Mary served red beans and rice. Elijah ate first, quietly, like he was trying to keep his emotions from showing. Naomi took one bite and looked up. "This is the best food in the world, Mom." Mary smiled. She had heard those words on porch steps outside a house she was no longer allowed to enter. She had heard them during timed visits. She had heard them while pretending not to break. But that night, the words sounded different. Not like comfort, like confirmation. Mary looked at her children. She looked at Opal's photograph. She looked at the recipe book open on the counter. For the first time in months, the room did not feel borrowed from someone else's life. It was small. It was imperfect. It was full. Home does not always come back looking like the place you lost. Sometimes it comes back as a studio apartment, 3 plates, a pot of red beans, and children eating without a clock counting down the visit. The next months did not turn Mary's life into a fairy tale. That matters, because people love to pretend one public victory fixes private damage. It does not. Mary still woke up some mornings afraid the court would change its mind. She still flinched when official-looking envelopes arrived. She still had to stretch money. She still had to wake before sunrise. She still had to help Naomi through nightmares and Elijah through silence. She still had to answer hard questions. Why did Dad do that? Did he not love us? Were you scared? Mary never answered with hatred. That was not because Andre deserved mercy. It was because her children deserved freedom from carrying adult poison in their mouths. So she told the truth carefully. Your father made choices that hurt people. Adults can love badly when they care more about control than care. You are allowed to love him and still know what he did was wrong. Some nights, Elijah said nothing. Some nights, Naomi cried. Some nights, Mary stood in the kitchen after they slept, one hand on the counter, breathing through a grief she could not cook away. But every morning she opened the truck. Every morning, Opal's photograph watched over the serving window. Every morning, people came. The line grew. After the television segment, Opal's table became more than a food truck. People talked about it like a place, even though it moved every day. Customers checked the location before work. Churches requested catering. Office managers called for lunch orders. A small business association invited Mary to speak at a community event, and she almost said no until Pastor Yvonne told her fear was not humility. By spring, Mary had enough saved to buy the truck from Pastor Yvonne. $4,500 she paid in a cashier's check. When she handed it over, Pastor Yvonne held the check but did not look at it right away. "Raymond would have liked you," she said. Mary swallowed. "I wish I could have met him." "You did," Pastor Yvonne said, touching the side of the truck. "This was part of him." Mary looked at Opal's table, at the gold letters, at the serving window that no longer stuck, at the tires that now carried her from one corner of Atlanta to another. Then she signed the paperwork. Mary Johnson, owner, another document Andre could not erase. Denise came that evening with sparkling juice in plastic cups. Terrence brought flowers from a gas station. Donda brought a small gold decal for the back window that read, "Let the fire do its work." Pastor Yvonne prayed over the truck. Mary stood with Elijah on one side and Naomi on the other, while people from the church, customers, friends, and strangers clapped in the parking lot. It was not glamorous. It was better, because nothing in that moment had been handed down by a judge or hidden inside a lawyer's office. It had been earned, plate by plate, dollar by dollar, day by day. Charlene came to the truck once in early summer. Mary saw her standing at the end of the line, thinner than before, sunglasses pushed up on her head, purse held with both hands. For a second, Mary almost turned away. Then Charlene reached the window. "Hi," she said. Mary looked at her. "Hi." The silence between them was full of everything they both remembered. Charlene's eyes moved to Opal's photograph, then back to Mary. "I am not here to ask for forgiveness," Charlene said. Mary said nothing. "I just wanted to say I am sorry without making you responsible for making me feel better." That was the first honest thing Charlene had said in months. Mary took a breath. "What happened to the townhouse?" "Gone," Charlene said. "I am renting a room from a woman near Marietta." Mary nodded. Charlene gave a sad little smile. "I chose wrong." Mary did not soften it. "Yes," she said, "you did." Charlene looked down. Mary continued, "But Andre was wrong before you were. Do not let him make you think your shame belongs only to you." Charlene wiped her cheek. "I do not know how to fix it." "You may not be able to fix it with me," Mary said, "but you can stop letting him decide who you are." Charlene nodded. Then she ordered 1 plate of red beans and rice. Mary served it. She looked Charlene in the eye. Not because everything was healed, because Opal had taught her that feeding people was how you told them they mattered, and sometimes people matter even when trust is gone. Charlene paid. Mary accepted. That was all. Not every ending needs a hug. Some endings are just 2 women standing on opposite sides of a serving window, telling the truth without pretending. Truth repairs everything. Andre tried once more to regain control. In July, he filed a motion claiming Mary's work schedule was too demanding and that the children spent too much time around the business. Forsythe was no longer his attorney. The new lawyer was cheaper and less polished. The motion went nowhere. Simone responded with school attendance records, social worker updates, childcare arrangements, and statements from Elijah and Naomi's counselor saying the children had adjusted well and described their mother's home as safe and emotionally stable. Judge Maynard denied Andre's motion without a hearing. That was the final legal door closing. Andre did not call Mary afterward. He had learned finally that not every door opened because he pushed. By the end of that year, Opal's table had 48,000 followers. Mary hired her first employee, a culinary student named Brianna, who had been standing in line for months before asking if Mary needed help. Mary did need help, she just had trouble admitting it. Brianna started 3 days a week, then 4. Then Mary trained her on Opal's fried okra, but not the red beans. "Not yet," Mary said. Brianna laughed. "That one sacred?" Mary looked at the recipe book. "Yes." Elijah started helping on Saturdays, not because Mary forced him, because he liked working the window. He was good with customers, quiet but polite, and people tipped more when he smiled. Naomi drew little menu signs with bright markers and taped them inside the truck. One read, "Today's cobbler is made with love and a tiny bit of bossiness." Mary kept it up for 3 weeks. Some customers took pictures of it. A local magazine reached out, then a podcast, then a regional morning show. Mary said yes to some, no to others. That was new too. Choice. For so long, life had happened to her through papers she did not understand and decisions made in rooms where she was not present. Now people asked. She could say yes. She could say no. She could decide. One evening, almost exactly 1 year after she first opened the recipe book on Denise's sofa, Mary parked the truck behind Greater Hope Baptist after a long Friday. Catfish had sold out by 1:10, cobbler by 2:30. Dinner was chaos in the best way. Her feet hurt, her back ached, her hands smelled like garlic and lemon. Elijah and Naomi were inside the church helping Pastor Yvonne set up chairs for a youth event. Denise was on her way over after shift. Terrence had promised to check the brakes the next morning. Mary climbed inside the truck alone. The sun was setting, turning the windows amber. She looked at Opal's photograph beside the serving window. The tape had been replaced by a small frame screwed into the wall. The photograph no longer curled at the edges. Opal's smile was still the same. Mary opened the recipe book. not to cook, just to read. She turned pages slowly. Red beans, catfish, smothered chicken, peach cobbler, cornbread, notes in the margins, more salt at the end. Let the gravy rest. Do not cook angry unless you plan to forgive before serving. This one is for when someone comes home. Mary laughed softly at that last one. Then she reached the back of the book and saw several blank pages. She had never paid much attention to them before. 214 pages of Opal. Then, empty space. Mary took a pen from the counter. For a long time she did not write. Then, on the first blank page, she wrote, Opal's Table Truck Gravy, Atlanta, Year 1. She listed ingredients: chicken drippings, onion, garlic, paprika, brown butter, stock, pepper, patience. Then, in the margin, she wrote, this one is for when they thought you were finished. She closed the book and pressed her hand on the cover. The story had not ended with Andre losing. That was the mistake people made when they heard it. Andre losing was not the victory. Mary living was. Mary feeding her children at her own table was. Mary signing her own lease was. Mary buying her own truck was. Mary choosing when to answer the phone was. Mary learning that a life rebuilt from ashes does not have to apologize for the smoke. Andre had taken the house. He lost it. He took the car. It sat unused and later sold for less than he owed. He took the children. The children came home. He took 12 years of Mary's labor and erased it from every document he could touch. But he could not erase the skill in her hands. He could not erase Opal's voice. He could not erase the taste of food made by someone who understood hunger, loneliness, grief, and dignity. He left her with $300 and a recipe book because those were the only things his lawyers said were not worth taking. That was his blindness. He could value a deed. He could value a title. He could value an account. He could value control. But he could not value inheritance unless it came with paperwork. He could not understand that some wealth is carried in muscle memory. Some power sits in a woman's hands while she stirs a pot. Some legacies cannot be refinanced, transferred, frozen, or locked inside a trust. You cannot take what you do not know how to name, and you cannot destroy what was never built for you. The following Sunday, Mary closed the truck early. No lunch rush, no dinner stop, no catering. She made one meal at home: red beans and rice, fried okra, cornbread, peach cobbler. Elijah set the table. Naomi folded napkins into shapes that looked nothing like what she claimed they were. Denise came. Pastor Yvonne came. Terrence came late with grease still on his hands. Donda arrived with flowers. Charlene did not come, but she sent a card. Mary read it once, placed it in a drawer, and did not decide what to feel yet. That was allowed. At the table, Naomi asked if they could say something before eating. Mary nodded. Naomi stood, very serious, holding her glass of juice. To Opal, she said, mispronouncing the name slightly. Everyone smiled. Mary corrected her gently. Opal. Naomi nodded. To Opal, thank you for teaching Mom how to make the best food in the world. Elijah raised his glass. To Mom, too. Mary looked down quickly. Pastor Yvonne added, to every woman who fed people and never got thanked enough. Denise said, amen to that. They ate until the room was loud with forks, laughter, stories, and second helpings. For years, Mary had cooked inside a house where her labor disappeared into Andre's image. Now she cooked in a small apartment where every person at the table knew exactly whose hands made the meal. That was the difference. Not the size of the room, not the cost of the plates, not the address, recognition, love that looked back. Later, after everyone left, after the children were asleep, Mary stood alone in the kitchen. The dishes were stacked. The recipe book was open. Opal's photograph hung above the stove. Mary could smell smoked paprika, brown butter, and something sweet underneath. She heard Opal's voice as clearly as if the old woman were standing beside her. You feed people and you look them in the eye. That is how you tell someone they matter. Mary looked around her apartment. At the small table. At the children's shoes by the door. At the folded napkins Naomi had abandoned. At Elijah's school bag leaning against the wall. At the life Andre had tried to prevent. Then she whispered, we are home. And this time, nobody could take the table from her. So here is the question. If someone spent more than a year planning how to take your home, your money, your children, and your future, then came back after watching you rebuild everything from $300 and the one thing they thought was worthless, would you ever let them sit at your table again? Or would you let them eat alone with the life they chose? This one is going to divide the room. Tell me your answer in the comments and also tell me what city or country you are watching from. I read those comments because every place has people like Mary, people rebuilding quietly while someone else thinks they have already won. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories coming about people who were underestimated, betrayed, erased, and still found a way to rise without becoming cruel, because sometimes the strongest revenge is not taking anything back from them. Sometimes it is building something so real that they finally understand they never owned you at all.